trying to do that probably for an hour today, and I can't seem to figure it out.
Down at the lower left-hand corner where it says start video, there's a little arrow pointing up. If you go up there, it says choose virtual background.
Lower left hand?
Very lower left hand of the screen where it says stop video. There's a little caret that points upward, and you hit that, and then there's a choice of the virtual background.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Video, general recording. So where do I choose that?
But when you go to choose virtual background, there should be some choices for you. Let me try for myself. And the one thing you can do is there's a plus button so you can add your own pictures. So if you see it says virtual backgrounds under your video, and then off to the far right side, there's a plus button. And then what you do is add any pictures from your folders that you want.
Oh, I got you.
Then if you're really, really fancy, you put a green screen behind you.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah, the green screen, no, that's something you physically put behind you. There you go, look at that.
That is Sandpoint, Idaho. And if you look at the cloud up there, you see this face right there in the cloud?
I do.
That was, I actually took that from our boat when we were up there fishing.
Oh, nice. Nice. Sean, I like it.
I figured if we're going to be doing like, all kinds of cool, we might as well.
Right.
I might as well just go full on.
There you go. So what kind of bug is on Mary Beth's screen that keeps...
Oh, I should go over and take a look at that.
Yeah, that's weird. Ryan, were you a Thunderbird? No.
No, I grew up at Nellis Air Force Base, where they are based out of. So
Yep. I lived under there for a while. Yeah, my buddy was a Blue Angel, so. I found it interesting at night, all the different engine noises, but no lights flying over my house.
yeah, it's definitely different. Well, you see afterburners, mostly just
Yeah.
afterburners, which will never get old to me.
No.
Video or something.
Mike Hogan, I'm showing now. Start video. Ha!
Hey, look at you.
Had a little trouble, folks. Sorry. I was in a panic here for the last 5 minutes.
What do I do?
Oh,
How do I do it?
I just pushed a whole bunch of buttons everywhere I saw, and suddenly it worked.
This is an all-star lineup, or
Yeah,
that's
we're
a nice
on
way
it.
to say it.
Tim, you're the official flag for Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, Tim, nice.
Hi, Mike.
I have no fancy background.
You're gonna have to work on that, Mike.
Well, here, I can show you this portrait.
There you go.
That's my brothers flying kites 40, 50 years ago.
Hey,
All right. You good?
Hey.
All right. How many are we supposed to have on this call?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, counting all the members, plus myself and Christy and Andreas and Sean and Mario. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like we have 7 panelists.
Okay, Mary Beth says she's on the phone, but we cannot hear her. So,
We cannot hear her. She's muted.
oh, so you can deal with that?
I don't think I can. I'm not a administrator person.
Is it being run? Is the host on her work computer?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll go make myself the host.
Oh, okay.
I'll be right back.
All right. And I should see we are on YouTube,
Yeah, see the YouTube's going.
but there's a little shield out there, something about one exception. So I have no idea what that is. Once Sean gets on, maybe we can ask him, make sure that the YouTube is correct.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have to depart at 3:30.
Okay.
Baseball season at around here has started back up, and so I'm basically a taxi. So if anybody needs a ride from here to there, I'm your guy.
You've been upgraded. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get this kicking really soon. I think once Sean gets it gets everything swapped over so that we can hear Mary Beth.
Yeah.
Her home screen is muted and her.
Mike, you're muted.
It's good. You didn't want to hear what I said. Anyway, no. It looks like Mary Beth is on here twice, and both of them are muted.
Correct. One is she's on the, yeah, she's on the phone, and then also her computer was used to host this, and Sean's fixing that.
Okay.
Sean, are you back yet?
Since this is a new committee, I thought I'd give you a secret. If you're muted, you can hold down your space bar and that unmutes you, and it's a whole lot easier than trying to unclick your mute button.
So you can hear me now?
Yes.
Can I type?
You know, one of the questions that I had that came up in one of the other meetings was when the people were trying to make reference to your PowerPoint. And the problem is, if you have the PowerPoint up, you can tell what page you're on. But when you put it online, they couldn't go back and reference to the page number that you were on to be able to, to make their connection with what they were after. So I don't know if there's a way to put that on, but
We'll look at that to see what we can do about correcting that.
All right, Sean, we ready?
I think we can go ahead and get started. Mary Beth's controlling it remotely. You can't hear her, but she's able to hear everybody else. So we'll just monitor the chat if something comes up.
Okay, perfect. All right, I will call this meeting to order for the Circulation Committee on April 7th, 2021. Pursuant to Executive Order N-29-20, certain provisions of the Open Meeting Act are suspended due to the state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Consistent with the executive order, the 2020 general plan update for the Circulation Committee will be held via the Zoom format, which we're on. And then also there are call-in options. So I will call this meeting to order, and we will, Tim, you want to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tim. Can we do a roll call?
Yes, Chairman Brian Baker,
Here.
Vice Chair Mike Hogan,
Here.
Russ Kelly,
here,
Ed Horton, Thor Ludi,
Here.
Hector Walensky,
Here.
Tim Underko,
Here,
Auxiliary Member Matt Fox, and Auxiliary Member Evan McKenzie.
All right, thank you. This is now time for anybody on the committee to comment on items that are not on the agenda. Nobody, seeing none. All right. Now is the time for public comment for items not on the agenda. If there's anyone in the public that would like to comment on something that's not on today's agenda. Anything? No, seeing none. We will need a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
motion to approve the agenda by Underko.
I'll second it. Thor Ludi.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Yes. Brian Baker,
Aye.
Mike Hogan,
Aye.
Russ Kelly,
aye,
Thor Ludi,
Aye.
Hector Walensky,
Aye.
Tim Underko.
Aye.
Thank you.
All righty. Now we're on to committee matters. Who's taking those ones? Is that Anders?
Actually, Mary Beth usually does this, but I believe what's up is Mario Tabellini with Wood Rogers and consultant to the town is going to present information on the circulation element. So Sean, if you could give access to Mario for his PowerPoint presentation.
I think Mary Beth is able to do that. Can you check and see if it'll do it? If it'll let you in, Mario?
Yeah, I'll try that now.
Cool.
That worked.
Perfect.
Okay, so am I good to jump into the presentation?
You're ready to go.
I want to first thank everybody for participating in this circulation committee meeting today. I think it's going to be a fun process. And so I'm here to just kind of give a little bit of a brief presentation on what the circulation element is, kind of what its purpose is, and give everybody some ideas, topics, background on things that we're going to be discussing in the circulation committee meetings going forward. And so the topics that we'll cover today, I think we're going to start with introductions, so everybody kind of knows who each other is, and point you to where the available documents are that you'll need to be reviewing throughout this process. Give an overview of what the circulation element is. We'll do a review of the transportation setting for the circulation element and the draft that we've already prepared. We'll talk a little bit about the approach we're going to take to updating the general plan update. And then at the end, we'll go over the upcoming schedule and open it up to discussion for all the committee members to bring up any questions, comments, concerns, and talk about any circulation issues that they'd like to discuss further. And so I think we're going to go ahead and just start with introductions. And if I can we start with the town staff, please?
All right, let me take this on since Mary Beth is silent, but Mary Beth is a planning director and coordinating the meeting here. We have Sean Rabe, who is the town manager observing today. Mario, who is the consultant working on the circulation element. Christy Consolini with the firm I'm with, who is participating in putting elements together. And Andreas Boer, the deputy town attorney for the town of Lewis. And my name is Anders Hauge, and I'm overall project coordinator for the general plan update. So at that point in time, maybe Brian, you could have the committee members introduce themselves.
Absolutely. I am Brian Baker, currently serving on the town council. Let's see, who do you want to have, actually each person just introduce themselves? We could go down the list. Trying to see, change everybody up here a little bit. I want to start with Russ.
I'm Russ Kelly. I have served on the town council probably somewhere around 2008. Was also part of the original folks that helped put together our first general plan, and very interested in what goes on in town. My background is facilities management. I was a facilities manager at Roosevelt Telephone for 27 years. And am very involved in Placer County Parks. I spent 20 years on the Placer County Parks Commission.
Perfect, Russ, thank you. We don't have Ed, correct? So Thor.
Yeah, I'm Thor Ludi. I'm a retired civil engineer, retired after 30 years working for Sacramento County as a division chief over their construction management and inspection division. So my background is basically public works, infrastructure, construction.
Perfect. Thank you, Thor. Hector.
Yeah, hi. I don't have the credential the other people have. I have the experience. I used to help the city of Berkeley exactly in this situation of transportation, and they adopt a couple of the trying to explain to them, and it was very successful. I'm a contractor, retired, with a lot of experience in construction, and I'm just trying to help and see if we can do something better here, especially with this amount of housing they want us to build. There's almost no room for circulation. It's going to be a challenge.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Hector. And then we got Mike Hogan.
Mike Hogan. I'm a planning commissioner for the town of Loomis. I've served 2 different terms there. I've been on the commission quite a while, 10 or 15 years. I'm a civil engineer. I started with local agencies, then formed my own construction company and consulting company. And I've done that now for over 25 years. I'm trying to move toward retirement. I'm almost there, which gives me more time to work on circulation committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tim Ondurko, retired Loomis council member, planning commissioner, served with Mike and others on planning commission. Let's see, professionally, I'm a real estate broker. I concentrate my efforts on commercial real estate and private lending. I have 3 kids in the school system, and we've lived here for about 10 years. And my interest in Loomis is seeing that it becomes the very best small little town that it can be. Thank you to everyone who's serving on this committee. I think based on what I've seen so far, we've got a great round of backgrounds from everybody, and I look forward to accomplishing something. Thank you again.
Perfect, Tim, thank you. We do not have Matt Fox, correct?
Correct.
So Evan?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Evan McKenzie. Many of you I have met before. I am the engineering manager for BEM. Our office is out of Rockland. We have projects in various places all throughout Placer County. And I'm here largely on behalf of Muna Capital, which is our real estate holding company. We currently own a good portion of land in the southwest area of the town of Loomis. Of course, we recognize that circulation is a very important topic, and there are many solutions that need to be found as we understand it for the general plan update. And we're very, very appreciative for the opportunity to take part in this process, and are looking forward to it very much. And just want to say thank you for allowing us to be part of it. And it's nice to see all of you who I haven't seen in some time.
Perfect, Evan, thank you. All right, so I think that's everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. And as Andrew said, and I'll just repeat it again for those of you who aren't familiar with me, I'm Mario Tambolini. I'm a transportation planner with Wood Rogers. We've been assisting the town for the last several years with reviewing traffic studies and traffic work for the town. And we're also assisting with updating the circulation element for the general plan. So as we move forward through this process, there's going to be some documents that we'd like everybody to be aware of and be reviewing as we move forward. And so all the Loomis general plan update documents can be found on the Loomis website at the first link listed here under 2020 general plan update. So that's always a good place to check as we move forward. Currently, there is a draft circulation and transportation setting that we prepared back in September of last year. One of the first steps we're going to be going over today is that draft setting. And so we'd like you to download that and take a look moving forward. And then also the existing circulation element that was updated last in 2016 is also available on the Loomis website under the third link. And that's another good document to be looking at as we work on this process. So to start this presentation, I'm going to give an overview of what the circulation element is and what it's for, just for those of you who might not be totally familiar with the general plan process. And so the general plan circulation element is basically a document that covers all transportation in the town of Loomis. And so this covers topics like congestion level of service, roadway improvement standards, speeds and safety, bicycle and pedestrian facilities, transit, trucks, rail service. It also includes parking and parking management. And one of the other things that we typically do in these elements is try to identify if there are any existing or upcoming deficiencies or problems with transportation, and maybe some of the solutions that we can start looking at to address some of those problems. Now, those topics that I just went over are pretty common. They're probably all addressed in the prior circulation element update. But there are some new topics that we're also going to need to start thinking about as well. Some of these are due to new technologies, others are due to government regulations and legislation that has passed in the last several years. And so we'll go over some of those now. Vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, is a big new topic in California. And in just a minute, we'll go into a little bit more detail about what that means exactly. Rideshare or transportation network companies, TNCs, are also becoming very popular lately. These are your Ubers or your Lyfts, ride sharing app services that you can order on your phone. Is this something that the town needs to start thinking about for policies moving forward? We know that self-driving cars are starting to become closer to a reality. A lot of cities are adopting things called intelligent transportation systems. These are basically your smart traffic signals and signs, things that help cities operate more efficiently through technology. Some quick examples of this are, I know a lot of cities now have an app that you can download on your phone that'll tell you where there is available public parking spaces, or cities may have cameras or sensors that detect current traffic levels on a congested corridor and adjust the speeds or the traffic signal operations accordingly. So these are some of the technologies that are becoming available. Could be interesting things to consider as part of this update. Electric vehicles are starting to become more and more in use. Is electric vehicle infrastructure something the town needs to think about? And then finally, environmental justice has been a big issue in California regulations in the last several years. And we'll go into a little bit more about what that means in regards to transportation in just a minute. So like I had mentioned, some of these new topics are specifically due to new guidelines or state legislation that has been passed recently. And kind of one of the biggest new state legislation that is going to affect this process is Senate Bill 743. And Senate Bill 743 specifically has to do with vehicle miles traveled. And this Senate bill was signed back in 2013 and has just recently gone into effect. And it basically requires a shift from level of service to vehicle miles traveled when evaluating environmental impacts of projects on transportation. And so for those of you unfamiliar, level of service, which is the old metric now, basically is just a measure of congestion or delay on a road. So it's how long you're waiting at a stoplight or how long you're sitting in traffic. And so generally the goal with level of service is to keep cars moving, to keep you going at full speed, to get to where you want to go quickly. Now the new metric, vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, is a little bit different. Basically, it's just a measure of the total distance traveled by all cars in an area. Generally over the course of the day, we look at it. So it's really just not, how quickly are you getting there or how long are you waiting in traffic? It's just how far are people driving every day? How much distance are they covering? And so the Senate Bill 743 required new CEQA guidelines to be adopted. They were adopted back in 2018. And for those that aren't familiar, CEQA stands for the California Environmental Quality Act. And this basically outlines how all environmental review processes are done in the state. And so when those new guidelines were adopted in 2018, they basically said that in July 1st of 2020, all cities, counties, local agencies in California had to start evaluating VMT for their environmental process. And so that is currently in effect. And so anytime you have a new project and it needs an environmental review, you're going to be looking at VMT. Now, what does that have to do with the circulation element update? One thing is that while SB 743 primarily applied to the environmental review, it also needs to start being reflected in our local policies that we set through the general plan. So we need to start thinking as we update the general plan, what kind of policies can we add or are already in the circulation element that focus on reducing VMT. And that being said, it does not, however, some SB 743 does not prevent cities or towns from still using level of service for their local planning purposes. It won't be part of the environmental review anymore, but you can still use it as a tool to help plan your future roadway system. And so I know the town of Loomis has a current policy for achieving or maintaining a certain level of service. And so that's allowed to stay in the general plan. But what we need to start thinking about is how do we best balance achieving LOS goals with other goals, such as reducing GHGs, reducing VMT, having multimodal transportation networks, things of that nature. So as we move forward, you might want to think about, do we need to update the town's LOS goals at all? I think right now we say LOS C or D is what we're trying to maintain throughout the town. Are we going to start to be in the future open to maybe slightly worse LOS if that means that we can reduce VMT or GHGs moving forward? And then another thing that we might need to consider is, in the past, when we plan new roadway facilities, we primarily base that on level of service, right? We'd identify where's there a lot of congestion, where's the LOS going to be bad, let's put the improvements there. Moving forward, maybe that's not what we want to prioritize. Maybe we need a new metric that says, well, okay, we realize there's some congestion here, but maybe there's other things we need to look at that can help us determine where to spend our transportation funding. And so that's kind of an overview of VMT, and that's one of the big things that we're going to be adding to the circulation element. But I also just kind of wanted to go over some of the other recent legislation that has a big impact on circulation elements. So the Complete Streets Act of California, which was from, I believe, mid 2000s. This requires the circulation elements to plan for a balanced multimodal transportation network that meets the needs of all users. So basically we're required not just to look at cars, but to look at pedestrian bicycle transit facilities as well. AB 32 and SB 32 established greenhouse gas emissions targets for the state. And the state guidance for general plan says that the circulation element for each city or town needs to support these goals. So it's something to keep in mind as we update the circulation element. SB 375, it required the creation of sustainable community strategies by all the different metropolitan planning organizations in the state, or MPOs. SACOG, or the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, is the MPO that Loomis is a part of, and they do have a sustainable community strategy that they update regularly. And basically what this means for us is that as we update our circulation element for the town, we need to be aware of the regional planning goals and projects as well. We can't just focus on our town alone. And then finally, there was SB 1000, and this required circulation elements to address environmental justice issues, such as equitable access to transportation systems. Now, I think we are adding a separate element for environmental justice to the general plan as part of this update. But that being said, one of the things that we're also supposed to do is when there are environmental justice policies that could apply in another category, so transportation circulation, for example, we should add those to that particular element. So we may want to consider, do we need to add some circulation policies that address equitable or environmental justice? And just to kind of go over really quick what environmental justice means, it's primarily just making sure that everybody in the community, regardless of where they live, how much money they make, race, age, gender, all have equal access to funding and to improvements that are getting planned by the town. Okay, and so now that we know some of kind of the recent legislation that's going to change what we need to focus on for the circulation element update, let's just go over some of the basic requirements for what the state wants a circulation element to include. So circulation is a required general plan element. It's required by the state. And as we prepare this, the state requires that we basically consider many of the other elements as well. We don't want to create this in a vacuum. They want to make sure that, you know, circulation supports land use, safety, conservation, and open space, and so on. And so I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the main guidance that the state gives us on relating circulation to the other topics. For land use, this one is probably one of the most important. It requires that the circulation and land use elements correlate. And this is specifically because you need to focus on promoting connectivity to destinations instead of just mobility. And you also need to focus on solutions that involve proximity to land uses. So as we think of where our transportation improvements are going to go, we really need to be aware of how we're connecting the major destinations in the town, but also make sure that we're planning out those major land use destinations close together and in a way that it's easily accessible by transit and sidewalks and everything else. Safety is becoming a bigger issue with the state. If anybody's been kind of paying attention to what's happened last year with the coronavirus pandemic, there's been quite a few less cars on the road. And as a result, it seems like people are starting to travel faster and faster because they can basically get to where they want to go without congestion. And because of this, we're seeing an increase in collisions, seeing an increase in accidents and things of that nature because of these increased speeds. And this was even a trend that we were seeing before the coronavirus pandemic happened, and it kind of just heightened the effects of this trend. So current state guidance for updating the circulation element specifically tells us to focus on things like increasing transportation safety by reducing driver speeds, increasing driver attention, and protecting vulnerable road users. So those are some good topics to keep in mind as we're thinking of new policies for the town. For conservation and open space, once again, the state recommends balancing mobility with an increased focus on reducing GHGs, VMT, and sprawl. And they want to make sure everybody's kind of following the mantra of we cannot build our way out of congestion. So, you know, if you have an issue getting people where they need to go, maybe the answer isn't to keep adding lanes or new roadways. Maybe there's alternate solutions we can use to help people get to their jobs and to their stores and schools. And then just last couple topics, it's always good to recognize that any planned transportation infrastructure can have a large and direct effect on the noise in the community, and also equitable access to transportation systems for all members of the community as a goal that everybody should have. And moving on, let's talk a little bit about kind of the overall purpose of this circulation element and the general plan. And these are going to be kind of the questions that we want to keep in mind as we're moving on to setting new policies or adjusting policies that already exist. So the general plan instructs future growth and development, but it also helps the town to function efficiently and effectively in the near term. And so kind of one of the basic ways that we do this, one of the ways that we kind of plan out what transportation is going to look like through the general plan is by identifying existing and future deficiencies. So we can kind of figure on, okay, what do we need to solve? How do we get people where they need to go? And then start to identify, okay, what are the best solutions we have to address these problems moving forward? So some typical deficiencies that we might look at are, where are the areas of high congestion in the town? Are there significant gaps in the bicycle or pedestrian networks? Do we need more transit service for specific people? Do we need parking management? Is that an issue when there's events or on the weekends? And then as we're thinking of potential solutions for those issues, we need to start to think about things such as what type of improvements do we want to build? Where should those improvements go? Is there a totally new type of improvements that the town should be considering that they aren't right now? And so some examples are, do we want to build roundabouts if we need more traffic control, or do we want to just build more traffic signals? What are the best kind of most desirable locations for new sidewalks and bike lanes that would get the most use? Is our speeds just getting too high in any areas, and do we need to do something to combat that? So do we want traffic calming features? Do we want lighted crosswalks to help pedestrians get the attention of vehicles? Do we want surface treatments? So maybe green colored bike lanes is a very popular one in the state now to help bicyclists stay out of the way of vehicles. All those topics are things that we'll be thinking about moving forward. Another topic that the general plan covers on is how do we fund all these improvements that we identify? There's already some goals and policies in the existing element on this, but the general idea should be we should have mechanisms in place for new development as it gets constructed to pay their fair share, to make sure we have enough money for the new traffic that they're generating and to help convey that traffic through the town. Another thing I just wanted to kind of go into a little bit more detail on. I'd mentioned before that we can still consider level of service, but you might want to look at some new metrics for how we determine where certain improvements should go. So some examples of those new metrics that we could start looking at, and these are provided by the state, are let's say we're building a new bike lane or a new multi-use path facility for bikes and peds. When we're deciding where that should go, maybe we should consider things like how many jobs are accessible nearby, or how many retail destinations are available within a 10-minute walk, or how many schools does this provide direct access to? So, when you're planning out other types of transportation improvements, these are the types of questions that we should be answering, and we might want to have policies on to help, figure out where those would best serve the town. And then once again, consider trade-offs between mobility and other goals, including GHGs, safety, public health, VMT. This circulation element update is an opportunity for us to set specific policies on how to balance those priorities. And then finally, as I've been saying this whole time, our real purpose is to help shape the goals and policies that are going to help achieve good circulation in the town. And I kind of just want to hit on, when I say we're going to be setting goals and policies, we should be thinking at things at a pretty high or big picture level. We want to say, here's an overall direction we think the town should go in. Here's a big need that we see that the town has. Here's an area that seems like it could use some help. We'd be kind of tackling things on that level. We don't necessarily need to get into the details of, exact location of where a new signal would go or where a sidewalk would go. We want to focus on, big picture, what types of things do we want to see in the town moving forward. And so for the next topic here, and this is kind of the second of just the two big technical pieces that I'm going to share with you. And then after this, we'll get into the next steps in the discussion. But I wanted to go over the current transportation setting. And so, like I said, we prepared a draft setting back in September. And what the setting is basically just an inventory of all the existing and planned facilities for transportation in the town, and also basically an inventory of how traffic operates today and how we think it'll operate in the future. So just really quickly, I wanted to show you some of these maps that we have of the existing facilities in the town. And kind of one of the things we'd like the circulation committee to do is just review this draft setting. So, if you see anything on these maps that you think is missing or needs to be changed, or, we can improve on, please take notes and submit comments later on. So this is our existing roadway classification map. Basically every road in the town of Loomis is classified as either a residential street, a collector, or an arterial. And these classifications generally determine how much traffic we think should be on each street, and then also how many improvements are going to be on each street. And improvements might include lane widths, bike lanes, shoulder widths, sidewalks, things of that nature. And so you can see here the arterials have the most traffic. So that's places like Sierra College Boulevard, Taylor Road, Brace Road, Rockland Road, and all your residential streets have the least traffic. And these are intended basically for local traffic only, no through traffic. Moving on, Loomis basically has 2 current truck routes that go through the town. This is basically the only roads where large delivery trucks are allowed today. One is on Sierra College Boulevard, and the other is on Interstate 80 through the town. Currently, Town of Loomis also only has 2 transit routes that travel through and have stops in the town. These are operated by Placer County Transit. There is Route 50, which you see in blue there, travels along Sierra College Boulevard and Taylor Road, and it has several stops along Taylor Road throughout the town limits. And then you also have the Placer Commuter Express, which travels along Taylor Road, Horseshoe Bar, and then gets onto I-80. And this route only has a single stop at the intersection of Taylor Road and Horseshoe Bar Road. There's 2 existing railroad segments through the town of Loomis. Both are traversed by Union Pacific, but there's also Capital Corridor trains on the tracks just north of Taylor Road. And now we're moving on to the bike facilities in the town of Loomis. And so this is actually one of the maps and images that we're probably going to be updating a little bit in this go around. This bikeway master plan was prepared back in 2010, as you can see on the bottom. And I believe this was actually part of initially an effort for kind of a Parks and Rec master plan for the town of Loomis, but was then eventually adopted into the circulation element that was updated in 2016. And so what this shows is all the solid lines are the existing identified bike facilities in the town, and all the dashed lines are potential locations where future bike facilities could go. So that being said, they did identify quite a few locations, as you can see, quite a few dashed lines where these bike facilities could go. So potentially one of the things we might be doing to this map is maybe trying to narrow these down to which ones we think are potentially the most feasible or most important moving forward to try and give some more specific direction to new bike facilities for the town. There was also a trails master plan. So this could include hiking trails, but also potentially shared pedestrian and bicycle facilities. And similar to that bicycle plan, the existing facilities are shown as solid lines. You can see there's a handful. There's a trail identified in southern Loomis. There's some of the existing sidewalks are shown in the solid blue. And then all the dashed lines, once again, are potential locations where future trails or multi-use paths could go. And once again, this is probably something we're going to look at revisiting and maybe come up with a short list of what do we think are the highest priorities for new locations for where these trails could go. Kind of another thing we'll probably be considering for these future facilities is maybe, what's the cost and how much land is available for some of these, what are the most feasible facilities that we could potentially implement going forward. Okay, and so those are some of the images from the draft setting that's available online. But as you make your way through that draft setting, you'll see that some of the sections are still in progress. And so moving forward, we are going to be still updating the traffic data. We're going to be getting counts from 2019, just before the pandemic began, as that represents kind of the highest typical conditions of traffic that we saw in the town in recent years. We're going to be coming up with new future volume forecasts based on build out of the new land use element once it's ready. So basically a projection of what traffic will look like in 20 years from now. We'll also be revisiting existing and future level of service and identifying deficiencies. We'll have an estimate of existing and future vehicle miles traveled in the town. And we'll also be revisiting what planned transportation system improvements and multimodal improvements are planned for the town going forward. So some of these studies are either underway or will be worked on shortly. And I think my current plan is that they will likely be posted in the next month or two. And so we may go over the findings in a future circulation committee meeting. Like I said, the setting also is basically where we identify where deficiencies are in the town today. So we haven't updated the level of service and deficiencies with the 2019 counts quite yet, but we're working on it. But I wanted to revisit, these are the deficiencies that were identified in the prior circulation element update, and these were based on year 2014 traffic counts. So, these were kind of some of the locations that Element was looking at improving in the past iteration. So for roadways, it identified Horseshoe Bar Road and Tail Road as having too much, or LOS deficiencies or too much traffic. It also identified either poor pavement or narrow lane widths at Horseshoe Bar Road, Barton Road, Laird Road, Wells Avenue, as well as Bankhead, Brace Road, Webb Street, and Sierra College Boulevard. So these were some of the areas where potentially could use roadway widenings or repaving moving forward, according to the last circulation element. Similarly, identified 4 intersections where there was excessive delay or queuing currently. And those were the intersections of Horseshoe Bar and I-80 eastbound ramps, Taylor Road and Webb Street, Taylor Road and Horseshoe Bar Road, and Taylor Road and King Road. So reason I kind of go over these is, this is the kind of thing where we'd like to get just kind of a reality check. So, if there's other issues, if there's other areas of high congestion that the committee members are aware of or that things should be on this list, I think that would be great comments for us to hear. And that's something that we could look into closer as we're doing the updated year 2019 analysis. And then as far as deficiencies in the bicycle and pedestrian system, the last circulation element specifically identified Taylor Road through downtown as an area with significant gaps in the bike and pedestrian facilities, where filling in those gaps could have a big benefit to the community. And then just really quickly here, these were the future deficiencies identified in the last circulation element update. I believe this was for projected year 2035 conditions, so 15 years from now approximately. And as you can see here, the red and the yellow lines represent roads that are over capacity or have a lot of congestion. And the purple dots represent intersections where they thought there would be too much delay or congestion. And as you can see, this is a lot of the same facilities that were identified under existing conditions, with some additional intersections being impacted as traffic levels grow higher. Okay, and so that wraps up kind of our overall summary of what the circulation element is and our summary of the transportation setting. So now I just want to go over briefly kind of what we think our overall approach will be for updating the general plan moving forward. So one of the things that we'll be doing together as a committee, and also, myself and the town staff will be doing, is reviewing the existing goals, policies, and implementation measures. And the kind of basic idea of what we're doing is keep any policies that are still relevant as currently written, modifying those that need minor updates, deleting those that are complete, not relevant, or not compliant, and then potentially moving and referencing those that belong in another element to reduce duplication, or basically kind of consolidating duplicate goals and policies down. Another thing that the town staff is going to be doing is reorganizing all the goals, policies, and implementation measures in the entire document with a better numbering system. So this will help us relate specific goals to the objectives and policies and implementation measures that are specific to that goal. So for example, if you have goal number 1, you'll have potentially objective number 1.1 associated with it, and so on. And so, like I said, one of the things that we'd like this circulation committee to do is potentially review all the current goals and policies and implementation measures in the circulation element today, in the existing element. And some of the questions that we'd like you to look at are, has this policy or program been effective? Does the policy or program address the corresponding goal? Is the text appropriate? Has this policy been completed, or is it no longer relevant? Does this potentially belong in another element? How can existing policies or programs be strengthened? Are there issues not addressed by the existing element that should be? And also, which goals, policies, and implementation measures correspond with one another? So moving forward, I just wanted to give everyone kind of a brief idea of what the general plan update process looks like. We're currently, I believe, just starting out for quarter 2021, and we're right in the middle of the general plan committees. Over the next couple months, we will be completing our technical analysis studies for the circulation element, and we'll be going over the results and findings of those in future circulation committee meetings. I think we're planning currently on having maybe 3 or 4 total circulation committee meetings. So there'll probably be a couple more after this one. And they'll be meeting on the first Wednesday of every month, just like this one was. And looking forward to future steps for this general plan update. There will be council and commission workshops through the 3rd quarter this year. The environmental document will be started kind of late this year and probably go into early 2021. And we're looking at potentially completing the overall general plan update process in quarter 2 of 2022. So going over kind of next steps, and we can, talk about these more in the discussion period of this meeting, which I'll open up next. But basically, we'd like everybody that's part of the circulation committee to identify any areas or topics of concern in Loomis regarding circulation that can basically help guide this process moving forward. We'd like everybody to review the setting to determine if any additional topics should be added or if the data is accurate. And like we said previously, that draft setting is available online. We'd like all the circulation committee members to review all the general plan update documents for all the elements, if possible. You don't have to read every piece of information, but kind of skimming through them to get some background on the different topics is always good to get a better understanding of the existing conditions in Loomis and how circulation can tie into the other elements. And then for the next meeting, we'd also like everybody to review the existing circulation element goals, objectives, policies, and implementation measures so that we can start identifying, things that need to be changed, added, subtracted, modified, and so on. And just as we move forward, if you ever have any comments or questions, we have a specific email set up where all those can go. That's gpupdate@loomis.ca.gov. So as you're reviewing any of these existing or planned documents and you have any comments you'd like us to take a look at, please send those to that address. And so I think that concludes my presentation portion of this meeting. And so I think next we were planning on potentially open this up to the entire committee for a discussion portion of the meeting.
That's correct, Mario. So Brian, if you want to then open it up to the committee, and the next step after that, so the committee members and then the auxiliary members, then the process will be to go to any public members who have comments and then bring it back to the committee after the public has had a chance to speak.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Mario. Does anybody on the committee have any comments, questions, discussion about what's been presented so far?
Actually, I do.
Go for it, Russ.
As I was looking at the maps, and it doesn't matter which map I'm looking at through the general plan, in the legend, there's no way to identify if you have the right map. And I mean, there's not a date on the map. There's a date on the document, but not on the map. And as being a anal facility planner, I believe that every map should be identified as to the date of it. It should have a history someplace, as well as why it was changed. So that on a construction drawing, we put it right on each sheet. And we put a master index in for that particular drawing to say, these are the things that happen and these are the issue changes and why. As I was looking at these, we've got way too many maps, and I look at some of them and I say, well, these roads are not here anymore, or these are new roads, that sort of thing. So I would like to have some way to track that and always make sure that we're using the right maps.
Let me address that. The town is engaged in updating their GIS system, and all the maps will be produced in that GIS system. And there will be the title blocks, north arrow scale, et cetera, placed on those. So you're looking at existing maps that were adopted previously. And as we update these maps, then all of that will be put into the GIS and we'll have that information. The other thing you should be aware of that we're doing is anytime there's a change, we're giving a version number on it. So if you'll take a look at the city's website, say under volume 3, the setting documents, you'll see there are some documents that are now numbered volume 2. Volume 0 is the original document. Volume 2 means it's gone through a couple of revisions. Those are all done in tracking mode so that you can go back and take a look at the changes that have been made. But as soon as the version is done, we accept all those changes and then start out with another version. So some of that will take a little research to go back and take a look at the progress on the document. So we'll be doing the same with the mapping as we update the mapping. So right now we're in the process of that. We're just getting some information out of the county this week on parcels and additional information. So the next round of documents should have the new and corrected maps with the information you're asking for, Ross.
That's great. I believe that also that map should be able to point to the other elements of that they're being used in. So we don't have to search around and say, is it in this element? Is it used over this element or whatever? It'll help us better to understand how it's connected and what the uses are. I was looking at the borderline around the town.
Just a minute, Russ. Carol, could you just make note of that, and we will do that in future documents, is show that. And just part of that point, and Mario brought it up earlier, for goals and policies that transcend elements, we will have the goals, policies, implementation measures specific to the element, and then we'll have a section saying these are goals, policies, implementation measures in other elements that relate to this element. So again, you could be looking at the circulation element and understand the goals, policies that might be in other elements that impact the circulation element. So that will also be in the document. So, but good point. We'll make sure to do that.
That'd be great. Also, one other thing is we all use these acronyms and we need an acronym index
Okay.
so we can be sure we're speaking the same language.
Actually, there is a glossary, and it's in volume 2 of the general plan if you look on site. And it's a glossary that we're going to have a single glossary for all terms and then reference glossary in other documents. But take a look at that glossary, and if there are terms that you don't see in there, we will add them to that.
Okay, if we have a concern about a roadway or we think there's a need for a roadway, like one of the places that I look at is, and has been mentioned before, is Laird Road up by Franklin School. That's a pretty well-passed roadway. But seeing the town doesn't always go have roads going into the county, there's some places around that would help circulation significantly if we had a connection that runs from the town of Loomis to King Road, from Horseshoe Bar at Oak, I think it's Oak Lane, going over towards the park, a connection to King Road. That's out of our boundaries, but yet it's something maybe we could get the county to look at to see exactly how that might help everybody in the traffic situation.
All right. And Carol, that is a recommendation I think we carry forward. Just so you know, one of the things we're trying to do is record the recommendations of this committee in the minutes that will be going into a document that we're preparing called comments and responses. So you'll see how we're dealing with each of these issues. And we're trying to make sure that Carol is taking the minutes that will reflect those things that are directive to the town staff and the team. So that's the reason I'm interrupting with Carol, to make sure we get those down.
Thank you.
Mary Beth, I think I saw Tim's hand up, but I don't see it up right now.
Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Brian. I second Russ's comments. Thanks, Russ, for the nice comments. I second Russ's comments about King Road. That has been a point of discussion for quite a while about perhaps finding an extension at King Road. And, in the past, I have not been, terribly optimistic that the funding is available. There's no question that, that it might help with circulation. But the funding is the big void there and all the discussion. But I don't think it would hurt to add King Road to the circulation element. So that's just to piggyback on Russ's comments. I'd like to see maybe that identified in this this update. Kind of a bigger picture outlook on this is, since the last time we updated the circulation element in 2016, not a whole lot has changed. I mean, we still have the same challenges. We still have the same traffic, issues here and there. And aside from Costco being approved, and the things that have been going on at our borders that we've kind of known about anyway, not a lot's changed. So I think that, what I think of as Loomis is we're really good at putting plans together and formulating plans. We're really not really as good at implementing those plans. So I think that, a lot of this discussion should revolve around how to actually implement the plans that we have on the books before we put a lot more effort towards more plans and more plans. So that's kind of my big picture commentary. Brian, when we were on council together, we talked a lot about the queuing of our traffic signals as being a top priority. And I think that if we could, again, I think we had that number close to $1 million as far as what it would cost to queue everything simultaneously. And so I think that it needs to be a priority on how to fund something like that. I don't know if we take a better look at our mitigation fee schedule. Maybe that's where we help raise money for that. But that seemed to be a pretty big issue that staff would often remind us about. So I'd like to maybe focus on the queuing issue that we have in town. There'll be more discussion, but those are kind of my opening remarks. I appreciate everybody again volunteering and putting your time forward on this committee. That's it for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
It looks like
Thank you.
Thor has his hand
Yeah,
raised.
thank
so-
you. Thor?
Yeah, a couple questions, and one is I heard the gentleman did the presentation talk about going back and doing traffic counts prior to COVID. My question is, how does the developments in Lincoln, for instance, Bickford Ranch, factor into the overall traffic counts on Sierra College and the intersections, the priority intersections we were talking about earlier? And then the second question I have is the proposed Doc Barnes extension, which was, part of the Village at Loomis proposal, is that currently on the general plan?
Would you like me to take that?
If you could, because I don't know
Yeah,
the answer.
so Doc Barnes Drive is in the current circulation element. It's one of those roads that is shown in the circulation element, so that is in there. The Bickford Ranch stuff, so the projects that are outside of our borders, if they've already been approved, we hopefully had some sort of mitigation measure that was brought forward for those. I think that some of those we missed the boat on, and there's not much we can do at this point on some of those. But if it's a new project coming up, we follow the CEQA process, and we send letters and comment on EIRs to make sure that our concerns are addressed as much as possible. So, but I can tell you, like on Bickford, I'm not sure how much that I wasn't here when Bickford was proposed and when all that stuff happened. So I'm not sure how much mitigation measures were included for the town. I doubt that they're going to be even close to being adequate, unfortunately. But because that project's already been approved, EIR has been certified. I'm not sure if there's, in fact, I'm doubtful that there's any way for us to go back and get anything additional to mitigate that traffic. One of the other issues that we have is, there's PCTPA, which I think Mario talked about. There's also SPARTA, which is the South Placer Transportation Planning Agency, that's made up by the county, Lincoln, Roseville, and Rockland. Loomis isn't a part of that. So that it's a subsect of PCTPA that looks at the South Placer region. We're not a part of that, and I'm not really sure why we're not a part of that. The decision was made before I was here again. And before anybody on the council was here. So I don't know why we're a part of that, but we're cut out of a lot of the discussion regarding what happens along Sierra College Boulevard because we're not in that. And we've asked to be part of it and we've been denied being part of it.
Yeah, and I will add to that, we do account for future plan developments by doing a future scenario. So we'll potentially look at traffic volumes in the year 2040, say, and that'll be volumes from existing counts plus build out of the Loomis general planned land use element, plus build out of known other specific plans or developments or the other city and county general plans adjacent to Loomis, all the traffic generated by that. So we will have a condition where we look at traffic from all those developments and identify, where the deficiency is going to be and how do we need to appropriately size our improvements to accommodate all that. So we can use that scenario to help us guide improvements that we think the town needs to plan for moving forward. But going back to what Sean said, as far as getting Bickford Ranch to actually pay for some of those improvements, that's done as they're going through their environmental review process. So for something like Bickford Ranch, that process has probably already been completed. But if there's other projects coming up that we're aware of, now is our chance to identify, here's the improvements we think we need. And next time one of those future project goes through their environmental review, we can potentially hit them with, hey, we need you to pay your fair share to all these improvements we've identified already, and try and collect money in the future that way.
Go ahead, Thor.
So I guess, I think I'm hearing two separate things. One is there's nothing we can do about the volume of traffic due to, say, Bickford Ranch or the other developments currently going on over in Lincoln. But it seems to me like you still have to factor in those traffic counts, as I think Mario mentioned,
Right.
when working on the general plan update for the ideal situation. And while funding may not come from Bickford Ranch folks, that's not to say you shouldn't still plan it in your general plan update and seek funding from alternative sources.
You're 100% right, and that is the way that we do it. So like for example, Costco, the Costco EIR, the traffic study that was done for Costco, that traffic study assumed Bickford Ranch and the farther out cumulative. Mario can answer this stuff probably better than I can, but those projects were a part of that that EIR and the traffic study that we did. So they are accommodated, and they will be, the traffic volumes will need to be part of the general plan, because otherwise nothing gets built to the level that needs to get built. It'll always be undersized, and we don't want that. The issue that you're identifying, I think, is where do we get the money for that? And that's going to just be an ongoing issue, I think, that we're going to be, trying to work through.
All right, Thor, you good?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody else?
No,
Mike? Go ahead,
Very
Mike.
good. Very
There we
good.
go.
You release Mike, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go in regarding the Bickford Ranch issue. We had a chance to be part of SPARTA and Regional Planning Commission, Transportation Commission, but we basically pulled out and sued Bickford Ranch directly ourselves. Bickford Ranch was slated to put I'm not sure, $3 to $5 million toward improvements on Sierra College Boulevard. But that money went to the Transportation Planning Commission, not to the town of Loomis. So the town of Loomis at that time decided we would go it on our own and sued Bickford Ranch. I think we eventually, Sean, you may know more of these details than I do. I think we were eventually awarded $1 million, whereas we were slated to get $3 to $5 million. But that money would have been filtered through the Regional Transportation Planning Commission. And there was some fear of that, well, hey, they might not spend it on Sierra College Boulevard. But of course they would have. It was a huge mistake that we made. We did get the $1 million, but that's a flash in the pan for what the improvements that are required there. So we need to identify some sources of funding. Maybe a transportation improvement fee on development. The problem being that we have very little development, and it often gets rejected even when there's a proposal. So that's not a very good source of revenue. I really don't know where another source would exist. We're facing a huge problem with Sierra College Boulevard because the development in Lincoln is going to use Sierra College Boulevard to get to the freeway.
I'm mute. They are muting me. I am muting them.
So
Okay.
then the other thing I wanted to comment about was
Say lower.
the only solution The connection to King Road is a good idea and it's needed.
Oh.
What I would hope to see someday is an interchange at King Road with an auxiliary lane on the freeway that runs to Horseshoe Bar Road. Now, Caltrans is going to tell you no. They've told everyone who's got an auxiliary lane thus far, no. But you see auxiliary lanes going in. City of Sacramento is a good example. Along Truxell Road there, Interstate 80, they got their auxiliary lanes in. Of course, they have more political clout than we do. But what I've seen in Loomis, I've lived here about 25 years. The population of Loomis has not increased significantly in that 25 years. 500 or 1,000 people. But when I look at the traffic counts, they've about tripled. So the traffic is not coming from Loomis. The traffic is coming from outside Loomis. There's a lot of traffic that jumps off the freeway and uses Taylor Road because it's more pleasant driving. I'm not sure why, but it happens. So I think part of our argument with Caltrans and the state is that we're providing a overflow bypass for the freeway, and that's not fair to Loomis. So Caltrans should help with auxiliary lanes and help us get it approved. Now, I think it takes an act of the legislature to get it because we have interchanges that are too close together. So we've identified the problems, but feasible solutions to the problems are hard to come by. And I just see that auxiliary lane at the freeway with an interchange at King Road. That's like replaces the Doc Barnes extension and would get people off of Taylor Road. I don't know what much else we could do, but that's a little bit of the history behind how we got in the fix we're in on Sierra College Boulevard. And also the fix that exists on Taylor Road. I mean, the problems that exist on Taylor Road, there's not many viable solutions to it. And I really don't know what to do. But like I said, when I moved here 25 years ago, the fruit sheds were running their forklifts down Taylor Road with no significant issues. Now, could you see a forklift in the middle of Taylor Road today? No possible way for that to happen. The traffic backs up. When there's a problem on the freeway, the traffic backs up from Horseshoe Bar Road almost all the way to Sierra College Boulevard. So that's basically proof that that's overflow freeway traffic coming our way. I'd like to see funding sources identified, some money coming in, and a long-range plan of getting that interchange constructed, because I don't see any other solutions. And that's a long-winded summary of how we got here today.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike. So Mike, what you're saying is we should put more stop signs in on Taylor Road and people will quit using it as a bypass. Is that what you're saying?
No,
I'm just
that's
kidding.
not what I'm saying. We need to move the traffic through Taylor Road more quickly and more efficiently. Stop signs don't do it.
I know, I'm just messing around.
I know you are, I know. But, realize now, these traffic calming features they talk about, stop signs, you don't call them speed bumps anymore. You call them whatever, humps or speed tables. Okay, a car puts on their brakes going into the stop sign, making squeaking noises, etc. Then when it's their turn to leave the stop sign, they hit the gas. You generate a lot of noise with stop signs and speed tables. So they're really not a solution to anything. They slow traffic down, they increase noise. We need to find other solutions. But I appreciate you saying that, Brian, because a lot of people think that's the answer.
Yep. No, I've trust me, I've heard a good bit of it. Sean, do you have anything to add about the King Road or do you have any insight that we can get from your communications thus far on that?
Yeah, I agree 100% with almost everything that Mike said, which I can't agree with 100% of what he said because then I'll have to buy him a beer or something, and I don't have enough time to do that. So, but the thing about King Road, the off ramp, we're not going to be able to get the off ramp put in if we go through the normal channels of talking to Caltrans staff, PCTPA staff, FHWA staff. That's not going to happen. The only way to do it is to start talking to the legislature and to the folks who are our elected officials at the state and federal levels, and push it through that way. I think it's really important to put that into the overall circulation element plan, that's a goal that we want to have, is that King Road on-ramp, off-ramp. And then at least if it's in the circulation element, we have an ability to look for grants, be awarded grants for that stuff. If it's not in the element, we're basically dead in the water on that. It needs to be in the plan for the long range planning of this town. The only way to address our issue on Taylor Road is to start building alternate capacity on roads outside of Taylor Road. So building, whether it's the Doc Barnes extension, which is in the circulation element, which needs to stay in there. King Road, that's an important one to get done too. We have in there now the Swetzer Road extension, and I'm not sure how viable that is because there's so many properties along that side that that would be pretty expensive to do that. I'm not sure if
that one just takes a big one because of UP.
Right. So, and then you're so close. So even if UP, well, I don't think that we'd be able to get enough right away to build the road there in the first place from UP because it would be butted right up against it. And then that means that you're buying right of way from all of those houses along that stretch. And I just don't know how viable that is. I do think Doc Barnes is viable. I think that the King Road on-ramp, off-ramp is viable, but it's not going to be viable through the normal means. And we've got to do the kind of legislative pressure to get through there. So that's
Perfect.
my 2 cents on that.
Hector, you got your hand raised.
Hear me?
Hector, you
Gotcha.
we can.
That's it? Okay. Okay. So I hope you understand my accent, but you can ask me questions again. Okay, a few things. The roundabouts could be one of the solutions, but they take a lot of room and they are very confusing for a lot of people. And some aggressive, drivers take advantage of the slower ones, and it's frustrating. Regarding King Road, I live on Los Flores and King Road, and there's a proposal to build another 200, 300 houses, whatever it is. And that road definitely had to be widened at least 2 or 3 lines. How you do that? Because the existing road is just for one car on each side. When I had to turn left, it's a mess because it's a little, hilly area. And if you add more housing, there is no way around, in my opinion, unless you do a helicopter path or a bypass, which we want, is just to take over some properties on. They have some property, a lot of land they don't use, and in a way, legal way, and paying what it is and what's supposed to be paid. And I don't see any way around, but just taking some land from people and widening the streets. I don't see any way around. For the aggressive drivers, the only way to stop these guys, and they are coming more and more and more, I guess is just to put some humps in all Taylor, even from Pacific, all the way. So they can't speed, they have to go slow. And that will discourage people coming from the freeway because they will say, no, it's not convenient at all. We all are going to suffer, but at least when we have accidents and fist fight or whatever, because young people are getting more and more aggressive. And there are problems with drugs more and more too. Then I have another comment. that we can do some small buses to take people, very small buses, just for 10 people, that's it, 20 maximum, because we are going to have a lot of low income and senior senior housing, and most of them need help. So we have to plan for places where they stop and people can, stop and go the business. We can discuss that later. Other issues that I think for new housing is to, I don't know if you can do that, how to do it. Any new car coming to Loomis has to be electric. So that will help with the environment, because we are going to have thousands and thousands of more cars between Costco and the new development and more people, having kids, and that when they're 16, they have cars. So they want cars. So probably trying to find a way so people come with electric cars instead of gas. And anyway, in 10 years, you won't find nowhere to buy some gas driving cars. Everything will be electric. Then we're supposed to have some stations that could be, let's say, next to the Blue Goose and in 2 or 3 different places for public, the public to go and charge electric cars. And every new housing, by code, they have to have at least one charge in the garage or outside, because the housing is coming, more cars are coming, more noise, the environment will be horrible. There's no doubt about it. It's going to ruin everybody's life, and the city quality of life will go down. So those are some of my comments. I don't know if this is the right time to make them or to take into consideration. Another thing will be the ride share for the Loro High School, because twice a day takes an hour of traffic and it's getting very aggressive with the kids. And sometimes the parents, they drive them, they are busy, they're trying to, bypass other people. So maybe they have to have a station or 2 where they can drop the kids and the kids will be taken to the school. I think that's more or less why. Oh, another thing, that you're talking about trails for walking trails for people, and I saw that the city did some walking one between Taylor and the tracks, the railroad tracks. I don't see how people want to walk there, because it's so busy, so noisy, and so much gas. They get gas, they can get sick. So I would say make some trails in the other part between and on King Street between Taylor and Sierra College. It's very open, nice environment. We can beauty the whole thing, and people will go and walk there and have a place safe to go even at night. For now, I think it's enough. I don't know if I did something that can be helpful. Some comments.
Perfect. Thank you, Hector.
Okay, thank you.
Thor, you got your hand up?
Mary Beth, can you release Thor?
There we go. One question, I guess, for Mario is, Wood Rogers reaching out, or is the town of Loomis reaching out to the railroad folks to see what their long-range plans are as far as adding train traffic or reducing train traffic, whichever way it might go? I think at one time I read a document where there's maybe 15 trains a day split between the 2 tracks going through town. But my curious question is has anybody talked to them about their long-range plans and how that might impact the intersections at King and Taylor, Sierra College?
No, we haven't currently reached out to Union Pacific to determine if they're going to have more trains or the frequency of the trains moving forward. However, we are working on an improvement at the intersection of Sierra College Boulevard and Taylor Road to add some additional turn pockets and lanes at that specific intersection. And so as part of that, we're also looking at how the signal would operate with the trains coming through and, dealing with signal preemption or, clearing out the traffic to get them off the tracks when the trains come through. So that is something we can talk to our UP contacts and see if they have any plans to increase the train traffic in the future and make sure that that's accounted for in the traffic signal timing at that intersection.
Just from serving on PCTPA, one of the biggest things is alternative modes of transportation. And with alternative modes of transportation, one of the big ones that they're pushing is rail. And so I see that in the industry that I work in, which would be a lot of goods and commodities that once came over the road truck are now coming in rail car. So I do think you're going to see an increase in rail as we look to decrease truck traffic and things like that over the road. So I wouldn't be surprised if UP said that, yeah, it's probably going to go up 10% or 12% over the next couple of years. Russ, did you have your hand up still?
I did. I do.
All right.
First up, I'd like to thank Mike Hogan for helping me remember some of the things that went on with Bickford Ranch and that sort of thing. I was trying to decide at my age if I actually remembered and participated in that. And the fact is, Mike can confirm that, and I owe him a beer next time I see him. So with that, the Horseshoe Bar problem and the King Road problem does need to be looked at. And my belief is that we should have a frontage road that takes you from Horseshoe Bar down to King Road. And it should just be a frontage road. So looking at options for that, I think are the biggest thing that we need to do. I firmly believe that we are not going to get any changes done at the King Road overpass, mostly because we have the Penryn overpass so close, and it actually takes you back to King Road. So I think that all needs to be looked at. And I remember all the Sparta stuff. I don't want to talk about all that stuff because it was not productive. And I've also served on the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and I think that they do an absolutely great job of getting funding to go on and do the things that we need to do. So I agree with, going forward, making a plan, reviewing it, and start looking for the funding. That's always, if we had all the money we wanted, we'd just hire somebody to come in and fix it. But that's not the way it is. And so it's going to be a longer road than we want. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Tim? And then
All right, thank you again, Mr. Chair. I think this is an excellent conversation. I wish more people were tuning into this because, it's an opportunity to educate. I think that really this conversation can't happen without talking about Doc Barnes. I'll get back to that in a minute, but I want to express kind of my thinking as far as being practical. We've heard kind of a few ideas of where there's places that are causing congestion. I agree with Sean that Sean named 3 or 4 places that might be solutions to alleviate traffic or better circulate it. However, I agree with the comments being made already. I don't think King is really a practical King Road on and off ramp is really a practical thing that's going to happen for all the reasons people already said. so you kind of narrow it down from there, right? And what can we achieve practically? And we really can't have that conversation again without talking about Dock Barnes. And Dock Barnes is doable because it goes through the property that is now formerly known as the Village. And there was an opportunity at one point to seize that moment. And the town, as much as everyone likes to complain about traffic, just didn't feel like that was a high enough priority to allow for development there. But I hope it's a learning lesson for people, because if we are going to fix some things around town, we have to rely on development, because these roads don't get built without development. Schools don't get built without development. Overpasses and on-ramps aren't built without development. And the town has taken a very aggressive approach or anti-approach to development in the past. And instead of playing offense, we play defense, and we protect our borders and don't do anything. And the result is we get the traffic that we sit in. So I hope that, and again, this is why I wish there was a larger audience, because we're facing issues that everybody knows clearly. But the one way to fix some of these issues is to rely on the private industry to fix some of these issues. And if we want to turn our backs to those opportunities, well, we're not going to fix some of these issues. So I'm rambling, but those are my comments. Dock Barnes has to be considered as a top priority, and I think that the town needs to get after it and be more proactive about finding a solution on how to fund the Dock Barnes improvement there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim. Anybody else before I wrap up this portion of it? All right. So, from what I'm hearing, we've identified some ideas, some hot spots, and some different things. And people kind of, in my opinion, I travel more than most, so I get stuck in a lot of traffic in a lot of different places. Here in Loomis, our issues kind of, I think, can be put into 4 little bubbles. We have pass-through traffic, which is everything that happens outside of our borders that are using Loomis as a cut through. We have school traffic, which is very big, having the 2 schools so close together. We have business traffic, which generally goes 80, Horseshoe Bar, Taylor, King, Swetzer. And then we just have the everyday traffic. And so as we work through these different things on the vehicle side, that's something that we need to think about, is times of day, where it's going, what is happening. Those are the things that are going to help us come up with solutions. Sometimes solutions are simpler than we think. Sometimes they're harder than we think, but I think this has been a very good discussion so far on traffic. It looks like we got one more hand up. Matt, you want to chime in?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I was having some going back with Mary Beth. A few quick things on first. I agree with the Dock Barnes. That's got to be our #1 priority. I think that's going to help tremendously with getting the traffic through downtown. As far as the King Road on-off ramp, I think we need to be careful with that, because there could be unintended consequences. I know Rockland at some point is planning, at least I've seen the plans for it. I don't know when it'll happen, if ever, but of connecting Whitney Ranch Parkway over to Sierra College, somewhere just north of town. If that happens and there's an on-off ramp at King Road, then that on-off ramp is just going to be a shortcut for everybody between 80 and Lincoln, which will just be a disaster for us. So I think we really need to be careful about that King Road on-off ramp, because it's going to make Loomis more, it's going to bring more through traffic through the middle of our downtown. And then another one I think Rockland's planning on doing, which could affect us, is they're planning on connecting Dominguez, which connects to Del Mar over on the west side of town. They're planning on building an overpass from Dominguez over to Sierra College, which is going to create another bypass route essentially through Loomis down Del Mar, which Del Mar, anybody's driven Del Mar knows it can't handle any it's got right now. So we need to make sure that these projects that are being planned in Rockland and how they're going to affect us in the future, we take those into consideration. Because eventually Whitney Ranch Parkway is going to connect through Placer Parkway all the way over to 99. The last thing we want to do is have King Road be part of a shortcut between 80 and 99. That would just be a disaster. So that's all I wanted to add for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. All righty, so do you guys have all the recommendations that you need or that you were seeking?
I think, I mean, from my standpoint, I think that it's been a really good discussion so far. We do need to open it up to public comment. And then I think that Hector has his hand raised for one more comment as well.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead, Hector. You were unmuted and now you're muted again.
And now?
There you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Zoom is not my cup of tea. I never used it before. Very stressful. Okay. Matt Fox just brought some good information, and it's kind of scary. We have to think about all what he said and definitely take into consideration and see how we mitigate that. It seems like Loomis is going to be going through town, especially with new business and more restaurants, because I think restaurants do really well here. And everything had to be replanned for downtown. This is growing fast. I remember in Berkeley when I came to the country, it was kind of Loomis. Look at what is now. And I think we are heading in that direction. So I don't know if we are going to plan for now or for 20 years, be ready for, and this is a huge amount of planning, but either you do it right or just start patching here and there, and the problem will come no matter what to this area. This city is going to grow, I guess, at 3,000 or 4,000 people in the next 10 years, for what I can hear from people coming to this area. And there's more and more traffic because all the building, all the housing is going around, and Costco. So I think this is much bigger than what I expected after what Matt says. Thank you. I think I'm done for now. Thank you. Hello? Hello?
You can go ahead and mute yourself, Hector, if you're all finished up. There you go. Perfect.
Yep. Thank you. Evan, you got something?
Yeah, guys, I'm sorry. Just occurred to me to ask if I was wondering if Mario could explain a little bit further about the. I mean, I understand at a basic level the differences between a level of service and a VMT analysis, but in practical language, how does the outcome of the analysis tend to differ in terms of or between level of service and VMT? So obviously what we're used to seeing is the level of service type of analysis, but what can we expect when we're looking at it from a VMT standpoint?
So generally, the main thing that we'd look at when we look at VMT is we're going to look at how much vehicle travel is generated per person in the town or per capita. And a lot of times we'll also look at how much VMT is generated per employee working in the town. And so kind of the typical way you analyze that is you would calculate that under existing conditions. And then you would probably also calculate that on a future condition, assuming general plan build out. And the current general guidance from the state is that basically you want the VMT generated per person or per employee to be about 15% lower than it is today at some point in the future, or for all new projects that are constructed in the town. So, in really simple terms, you want new development, or you want the town in the future to be generating less VMT per person than it is today. So generally what that means is part of that we can potentially achieve through land use patterns, right? Locating the proposed job centers, offices, schools, shops, homes in areas that are close together, close to transit. And, we're also going to be impacted by how our neighbors are developing their land uses as well. But I think, generally the final results of the analysis are, if, let's say, we don't quite reduce our VMT by that 15% that the state recommends per person or per capita with build out of the general plan, we would want to start looking at, are there other strategies that the town could use to start reducing VMT in addition to land use? So that could include, potential for increasing transit in the area, more transit service. It could include potentially promoting travel demand management strategies. And those could range, for all sorts of things. I think, I believe it was Hector had mentioned, we could set up more carpool locations for schools. That's a great way to reduce VMT. So the town could implement a policy that encourages all schools to have a carpool program where they have, a coordinator that helps set up carpool groups with people that live together. Maybe you'd even recommend the same sort of thing for new places of business in Loomis to encourage their employees to carpool and have incentives for doing that. So that would kind of be the practical results of the VMT analysis. It would be one, helping guide our land use planning in a way that would result in the lowest VMT for new land uses. And then two, start considering those other policies that could take cars off the road through other means for existing and future drivers.
Did that answer your question, Evan?
Yeah, and just to clarify, largely why I was asking is, I guess I was curious what methods are built into VMT analysis that can help to account for pass-through traffic, because most of what it seems to be related to is what is actually happening in the town or in its immediate periphery. Versus the types of development or changes that are happening outside of the town limits that can result in an increase in straight up pass through type of traffic.
So generally the way that's handled is the state says we only have to look at trips that start or end in the town, or potentially are part of a chain of trips or a tour of trips from a town resident or a town employee, essentially. So if you have, huge development going on in Rockland or Lincoln or other neighboring counties, and they're traveling through Loomis, because all those resident trips are starting in Lincoln or in Rockland, they're completely on the hook for mitigating that VMT, and Loomis is not. So we specifically separate those types of trips in our analysis. And when we're looking at VMT impacts in Loomis, we're only looking at trips that start or end in Loomis, or due to the Loomis population, essentially.
I got it. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Anybody else before we open it up to the public? All right. Seeing none, do we have any public comment?
Mary Beth said there's one. She inadvertently lowered the hand. So Mary Beth, if you would let them through. It looks like Gene Wilson wants to speak. Oh, Mary. Oh, Gene, can you unmute yourself? And go ahead. Gene Wilson, Mary Beth said you're allowed to go ahead and speak if you could unmute yourself. Oh, okay. And the call-in user, unmute yourself and you can go ahead.
The call-in user on the phone will need to hit this. It's pound, I think it's pound 9 or star 9 to unmute
I
themselves.
think it's *9 according to
Star
the
9.
instructions.
Right, unmute here.
There you go, Gene.
Gene, you're on.
Okay. 3 quick comments and then a question. Quick comments. One thing about stop signs besides noise is that every time you stop at a stop sign, you're probably generating more greenhouse gas. I know that was a consideration at one of the stop signs that did get put in because it was needed, but that was a consideration. Secondly, Mike is absolutely right about the Sierra College mitigation from Bickford Ranch and how that went down in the lawsuit. And we did get $1 million, I think, primarily to help toward the intersection. So that should still be there, but how far that goes, given all the work that needs to be done, I don't know. Third is about charging stations, and undoubtedly there will be more needed. But for those who don't know, the town does have its own charging stations that are available to the public at the depot, right behind Taylor's. And there are also charging stations at Raley's, and Costco, as I recall, is not putting them all in right now, but they will be wired for, if I recall correctly, 28 charging stations in their parking lots. So we're working on it. More will be needed. Now, the question I have, and I do not have a solution, is I haven't heard any consideration if there's anything at all to do for the business, what's currently labeled that Blue Triangle Business Park on our current land use. And that is unfortunately a landlocked piece of property. And I don't know an answer for that. I've heard someone suggested we'll go through the veterinary clinic area, but that area is actually in a floodplain, which probably is not going to work for a road. Yes, the vet clinic is there, but when we approve some improvements there, some new buildings, they have a plan. Their buildings are built so the water can go through. You open the doors, things are built up, and the flood water can go through, so they were allowed to have it, but I don't think you'd put a road through there. The business park area, I really don't know the solution. I think at one time it was looked at as having that Swetzer extension, but as Sean said, that probably isn't very practical right now because you'd have to take so many pieces of property to be able to do it. So I don't know what you can look at, if there's anything that you can figure out that might help there, but it is a big chunk that we really can't use unless we do figure out something for it. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the person on the telephone, press *9 and you can talk. Yeah.
Did we have a
I see the hand.
That might be me again.
Oh, okay.
My internet has been going in and out, so I finally tuned in on the phone in case it went out when I wanted to speak, but thank you.
Oh, thank you, Gene. All right.
Perfect. Anybody else from the public have any public comment?
Doesn't look like it, Mr. Chair. There is one more committee member that wants to speak.
Yeah, I see. Thor, did you have one additional comment?
More of a question. Gene referenced something called the Blue Triangle. Can you explain to me where that is?
It's
Looking at the map that's on the screen.
it sits off of Taylor Road between Saunders and Bankhead. And it's on the west side of the tracks, about where Spec West is. Just
Oh,
over,
okay.
there's a triangle worth of land. If you look at one of our zoning maps, that is designated as commercial industrial back there. So it's just a landlocked piece of land, and I've heard of, people are talk of putting in a stoplight basically at Spec West and another rail crossing there. But yeah, but it's kind of a funny, funky little piece. I think that was planned there when the Swetzer Road extension was originally put into the circulation and general plan.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment?
I don't see any.
Okay, perfect. Seeing none, we will move to committee assignments.
Committee assignments, as Mario, you had on your screen before, is to review the settings section for transportation, provide your comments on any updates that we should consider, review the existing goals and policies, make your recommendations on those. Review, identify areas or topics of concern that need to be dealt with. And then one thing that's not on this list, but take a look at the mission statement, which is the town's vision for the future, and make sure that that is still the vision for the town. That is the assignments for the next meeting.
Perfect. Appreciate it, Anders. Really appreciate everybody, their input, their ideas, their willingness to serve on these committees. These are very important issues to the town and can be a little bit time consuming, and I appreciate your commitment to the town and the people here. Our next meeting will be May 5th at 3. And I imagine it will be probably in the same format at that point.
It will.
And so if there's nothing else, we will adjourn.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.